point, I'm going to record and initiate our meeting here for August. Thank you all for joining, all 29 of you who are with us here this morning. And I wanted to kick off, obviously, with a slide, which is just, it's just taking up from the e-news of this past week, thanking everyone, for the work on the garden tour. You can see there that Sharon and Renee report that we netted over $4,500, right, from the tour. So it's a significant boost to our finances, and it's made possible, right, through everyone's contributions here. This is what it's all about in terms of everybody making a tremendous amount of effort and resources to make to go forward on this. To that point, then, is that we'll talk more about the garden tour, and we're going to be emphasizing a lot. We'll be talking through a lot of it, as we walk through. Okay. So our overall agenda today, as we walk through, as we get through the program here, is to really celebrate the tour and to make sure that we have kind of a virtual walkthrough of the program as we go through it here this morning. Lots of announcements and updates to talk about, including, right, getting prepped for next month's meeting, September 13th, where our intention is to vote on the revised bylaws that the Bylaws Committee has been working on for these past months. So again, this is our agenda here for today. The board meeting will follow, and everyone, of course, is encouraged to participate in that. Okay, so our August calendar, it's a busy one. Even we've just finished with a hectic May, June, and July, and here we are, hurtling through August. Tomorrow is the kickoff for the Grays Harbor County Fair. Cindy will be talking about that in a few moments. Pacific County Fair is coming up. Mike is going to be talking about that in a few moments. And of course, we got a bunch of birthdays going on here. So happy birthday to all. Robin, I presume this is a birthday visit for you out in Bend. And Rachel and Renee, of course, is coming up. Her birthday tomorrow. So Don, we'll make a comment here is that Don's actually is having a birthday this next week. And as we'll share on the next slide, we definitely want to give him special wishes. So happy birthday, all. And speaking of this, then, is that both Reggie and Don are in the Montesano Rehab Center. And just a heads up here is that they actually would appreciate a call or a card or even a visit if you're in the neighborhood there. So both Don and Reggie, Reggie, of course, is as an intern, a trainee from this class, and was very supportive during the Home and Garden Show. And Don is also there, of course, and he's a veteran. So just a heads up, if there's any opportunity for you all to pass a card or drop a call to either Don or Reggie, I know they would appreciate it.
Kelly, can I speak for a minute?
Please, Mary.
I called Reggie Thoreau last week and talked to him, and I tried to call him this week to see, he talked about needing some help with his cell phone at one of the it wasn't Verizon, it was I can't remember the name of the company in Aberdeen, and he wasn't at Monty Rehab. So I've asked, I don't have his sister's address, but Elena does, so she was going to find out what happened to him. I checked with other rehab centers in Shelton, and he wasn't there. So it's a complete mystery about Reggie. I don't think he's there, but I don't know what happened. So if anyone does find out, if you would let me know, then I'm your sunshine girl, and I'd like to get in touch with him so that I can follow up with him. And then I talked with Don Barton last Friday, and I intend to call him again today. He is at Monty Rehab, and I'm going to follow up with him and perhaps go visit him if I can. So that's my story.
Most excellent. Well, thank you. And so word out, so Reggie is AWOL, and we need to find him. So if anyone has clues in terms of where Reggie is, let us clue in. Mary, thank you so very much. And again, a reminder for everybody is that Mary is our official, our contact folks for get well cards and thoughts and well wishes like this. So reach out to Mary if there's news on any of our members who would need a little boost, a little thank you, a little welcome, a little get well card. Okay, with that, let's just jump in to the garden tour. And again, it's a huge shout out to all who volunteered, and of course to all to Terry and her entire team of representatives that made the tour really exciting. Again, as we noted here, it's a net of $4,500. So it's not just a financial boost, however, that we want to recognize, but it's also the feedback that people get from participating with the program. This is some of the feedback that was captured on the comment cards, and you get an appreciation for the educational benefit of hosting this garden tour and the inspiration that it offers to others. So, this is very much in accordance with our mission as Master Gardeners to educate and inspire and encourage others to think about their own horticulture activities and what they can be doing in their own landscapes. So these are some great thoughts here. Some of these are, you can see, very practical. I got some great thoughts about raised beds and raising fruits and berries, but also some interesting, some thoughts about creativity, some inspiration, and just the social aspect of, hey, organized, friendly, an opportunity to experience hospitality. So there's some real joy that we bring into people's lives through this tour. And it's a in this day and age, that's not a trivial accomplishment. So everyone should be celebrating everyone's accomplishments. Terry, you have any overall comments and thoughts as we share before we jump into each individual garden?
Well, just that I hope everybody found it as joyful and fun a day as I always do on our garden tour. And that's why I always really like being a docent or a representative on the tour, because the people that come on our tour are just so appreciative. And on this tour, I think all of the homeowners were completely engaged with the tour goers as well, and also enjoyed it so much. So thank you, all you volunteers. Can't do it without you.
To that point, then, let's just jump in to talk about some of these individual gardens here. The first one, and I'll ask each of the garden reps if they're able to join us here today to speak to their gardens. I know that Vivian and Patty cannot join us here this morning, so so Terry and I'll riff on terms of what we found there. This was the Lemur's garden over in Central Park. And the comments, as you're going to see from some of the slides that we're going to show here, really underscore the importance, the significance of what these folks have done over 40 years of development. So this is the other thing I took away, is that you're spending a lot of time over years developing this garden. And of course, the real highlight for any master gardener is the fact that the Lemurs have captured every plant tag of every specimen plant that they of every feature plant that they have, and they have it they have it recorded in a notebook. And it's an incredibly simple idea, but the idea of capturing all this and having this history of what they planted and when they planted it, and of course where they planted it, is just a huge history of the recognition. The feature parts, and Terry, I'll ask you to comment on this as well. The feature parts that I just get blown away with in the Lemur garden is the fact that they logged the property a number of years ago, and the stumps that they were left with, they actually left those there as features around which they built, kind of a mini ecosystem. you know, with that, and just mini gardens celebrating the fact that you have this stump here with native plants. You see, there's a lot of starts from huckleberries and ferns, started in or around the stump, along with other plantings, you know, to create these as a centerpiece. So far from being a scourge and having to deal with you know, de-stumping the area, they actually created these things as major areas. The other thing I found interesting about this garden is how the different secluded areas. So they had different areas that were through vegetation compartmentalized and into interesting reflective spaces for a walk or for a quiet sit, and for interesting specimen uses throughout all this. Terry, do you have any other comments? Yeah.
Yes, the thing I really enjoy about this garden are these specimen trees. Chet has planted a lot of unusual trees for our area, like the oxydendrons and the weeping copper beeches. And he is not technically a master pruner, but he is a master pruner. He prunes all of his own trees, and he does just a sensational job of respecting the form of the tree and just making them pieces of art in his garden. So I always enjoy looking specifically at his ornamental trees.
You can see in this picture here too, by the way, he has, you know, little birdhouses and other habitats, you know, just tucked away discreetly. And and being there in the garden, you really could hear the bird life and that the insect life, a very vibrant living landscape.
The other thing I like about this garden is his berry garden in the back, his raised berry garden with strawberry plants on the fence, and he's very creative use of the space.
So again, 40 plus years of development and investment in the garden. Robin, we'll turn this over to you. The Perry garden, right, that you had here, and I'll walk through a couple slides here, but I was impressed in looking at the pictures, right, that were captured. Is the use of hardscape, you know, in terms of how it meshed in with the overall garden area, and of course the expansiveness of the area is incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
You want to pick it up from here and talk about individual comments? I've got a couple slides here that I'm sharing.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, I'm seeing him now. Well, he's a collector of everything, and that's what's so fun about their garden. I think he collects every old thing he comes across, whether it be a funnel to put, you know, oil in a can, or, you know, he doesn't let anything go to waste, and he takes everything and turns it into something in his yard. So he's got flowers growing out of sinks and toilets and oil funnels and watering cans and anything he can find, and he hangs them up and just makes something. He has a real vision of what he can make something into, you know. So he's a lot of fun, and he's very social. So he enjoyed talking to all the people. His wife is very shy and she doesn't talk much, but he's quite social. And I was surprised because they've lived there a lot of years, and so many people came by and said, "Hey, I'm your neighbor. Like, I just live like right down the street. I didn't know you guys had all this, you know." And so they got to know a lot of their neighbors by being on the tour. And I think that was fun for them.
What I see is that, you know, it may seem eclectic, all this collecting, but it seems like there's an overall theme going on here. You know, I mean, look at this hanging basket over here. He's got this little birdhouse, you know, built up around it.
Yeah.
You know, there's other things hanging on the trellis, for example, in the distance. He's got other birdhouses here.
Yeah, he definitely likes to make birdhouses. He told us of how he Oh, there was someone that lived near them a guy had a big wood shop and he had a mill and he had a whole bunch of wood in a shop and he died. And after his kids came in, they took everything they wanted. They opened it up for the neighbors and said, "Do you guys want any of this?" And so he went in and he took a whole truckload of wood, of old wood. And he has just spent years building birdhouses and things out of that old wood. In fact, he built his whole deck and all the furniture on his deck and everything with that old wood. He loves to build things. In fact, he built me. He has those posts, you know, with the like 4 different birdhouses facing different directions. He has several of those around the yard. And I just kept looking at them and saying they were so beautiful. And he brought me one, like the week after the garden tour, he brought one to me to put in my yard. Now I just got to get somebody to dig a hole to put the post in. But yeah,
Well-
he's quite clever.
And the other thing that isn't really apparent, but to me, one of the interesting parts of the garden is the back L of the garden, where they have had one of those mounded septic systems, and they have planted around the edges of it and as they could, and it doesn't look like a septic mound. The way that they have used that particular space. I thought that was really interesting, because most these days, if you put in a new septic system, you have to put in a mound, and especially in the coastal areas. So I just thought that was really creative how they integrated it into their landscape.
Yeah, I do too. No, I wouldn't have known that's what it was. I thought, you know, it's really cute.
Well, great use of color throughout, you know, and so very impressive that, you know, that this sounds like this is also a work of many years of developing, you know, and investing in the garden.
Yeah, and the funny part is his wife, she does all the planting. He builds everything, but she plants everything. But she doesn't know what any plants are. She just says, "I just see something I like and I buy it and I bring it." Because people were asking her all day long, "What's this? What's this?" And she'd say, "I have no idea. I don't know." So, she just knows what she likes.
Now, this next garden, Lori's on call for jury duty today, and Lori, I don't see you on the call here this morning, and you know, but definitely speak up if you are. But I know you were very impressed by by what you saw, you know, by what you saw here, you know, with the garden. I know that this was very significant here again with the hardscape that the Vessies had here, and my understanding also is that this was actually significant in that she actually suffered Susan actually suffered a loss in the family just a few months prior, and so this experience of getting ready for the tour became actually somewhat therapeutic in actually having her work on the garden and making things happen here. So I was impressed in looking through these pictures here of actually seeing, you know, that how the hardscape, no matter what the season, no matter what the time of year would be, would provide a lot of interesting view opportunities and you know, a significant attraction for the eye here. And of course, you know, as you're looking at this picture here, I mean, look at the color and the color contrast that she has with the conifers as well as the deciduous plants. Terry, go ahead, please.
This garden was actually on our tour before I was a master gardener. So I'm guessing maybe 2003 or 2004. And it might have been the garden tour where I filled out the little survey card and said I'd be interested in being a master gardener. And so lo and behold, I got a call in the fall after this particular garden tour. One of our former members, our wonderful Silva Jurison, actually talked her into being on that garden tour when it was a brand new garden. So in the 20 years or so, all of the plantings have matured, but she still kept the feature of the hardscaping. It's, I think a really interesting garden for that reason.
I'm impressed by the use of lawn, right? You know, we talk about lawn as a very inhospitable habitat for wildlife and such. And we also talk about lawn as an opportunity to actually make it to use it within contours. And you can see here that her lawn is very intentionally, you know, shaped to put some roundedness around the whole garden experience. And look at the use of rocks, by the way, of course, and this is you know, she has this incredible mound of, you know, of incredibly large stone that is definitely going to be an eye catcher no matter what time of year. Other comments from the Bessie garden? So this next garden is from the Rands, and it Wendy, I don't know if you're on you know, line here today. But this is an interesting in terms of you talk about a home that, you know, is that you're talking about a property that goes back, you know, you can see here well over a century in terms of the need then to actually you're working with a palette, you know, a landscape palette that has been that had been neglected, right, for decades. And and the use then of what you're seeing here in terms of intimate spaces, you know, such as this area here in that on the deck, and some, you know, and some, you know, and so instead of large expansive landscapes here and large expansive views, you know, your eye is really drawn to intimate focal points of individual specimens, and very thoughtfully placed both objects and plants. And of course, it really is, you know, it is kind of an eclectic eclectic collection here of it. You know, a U.S. mailbox we're looking at, you know, next to the jacuzzi, you know, and the large hanging fuchsias and a trained ivy vine. And then, of course, you know, this is the shed is just, you know, it's, you know, what a signature point this is, right, you know, throughout here. Terry, any comments you want to add?
Well, I think her design ability is absolutely amazing. Kind of like you said, Kelly. She can take anything and make it look incredibly beautiful and artfully arranged. The house was built in 1901, and they've been there for, I think, 25 years plus or something, and totally had to rebuild everything because, as she often says, the house was full of bats, rats, and all kinds of other critters, and the house was, even though it was a historic house for South Aberdeen, it had really fallen into disrepair. So they've spent years rehabbing the house, adding the rooftop dormer, which doesn't look like it was added. It looks very intentional. And so one of the things that I get excited about this garden and some of our other gardens on the tour is that they're in neighborhoods where people don't often, the residents of our community don't go. So to me, part of the education is to help people see they can have a fabulous garden no matter where they live. And to me, this is a great representation of that, because this garden is hard to spot from any of the roads, and it's in a neighborhood that's kind of coming back, but
and so echoing.
Sorry about that. It's my sister's in the hospital, so that's I'm gonna take that call in a minute. But anyway, so I thought part of the satisfying thing for me was getting people into some parts of the Aberdeen area that they don't normally get into. And
the final comment I want to make in this garden here is I want to make note that you know, that there's so many, instead of like large, feature plants in it, inside the landscape, you have a lot of small intimate plants here that are in containers and that are relatively small, but offer color and or texture and or some other accent. And so it's a salute, as Terry is saying here, is that the value of actually working, there's no need to have an expansive, acreage to work with here. You can work with a very small area and make an incredibly interesting and intricate garden experience. Although I'll note that there's a lot of attention that's got to get, placed right to fertilization and water and nutrients, care for all these little plants, tucked as they are into some of these being very small containers.
By the way, if I could make a comment, I was a docent here. She has a system for taking care of all those pots that really inspired me. She had dozens of gallon milk jugs filled with water that also had liquid fertilizer in them. And every time she waters, she fertilizes a little bit. And it was on a cart that she could roll around in the garden. So I have a lot of pots too, and that's a time-consuming thing. So she figured out how to do it quickly.
That's a great tip to pass on.
I thought it was pretty interesting in my talk with her. She said that they paid $10,000 for that house because it was in such bad shape, and ivy and berry bushes covered it almost totally. So to see what she did, what they did, I'm sure, with that whole property was amazing. I have lived here my whole life and I never knew that existed.
Yeah, that house is amazing. And I thought it was funny. She said, in my heart, my husband isn't a carpenter. He doesn't know how to build anything. I taught him everything he knows. She said, my dad was a carpenter and he could build anything. And so I taught my husband how to do it. And I thought that was cute because he does a really nice job for somebody who's not a carpenter.
So this next garden here, of course, is Susie Marshall and Vicky Kopecki, and this is also an output of decades worth of gardening and experience here, and this is also a repeat, as you can see here from the write up, a repeat garden on the tour from 6 years ago. And here, of course, now you get the change from moving from a small intimate space into a large acreage. A large acreage that has the opportunity of having incredibly, expansive plants, which have been chosen. When I'm looking here, I'm seeing that the choice in color and in texture and in look is just it's eye popping in terms of that, in terms of just the, in terms of the expanse of what's being created here in an overall backdrop. And then it's coupled, of course, with, some of these, as you can see here in this picture here, a sitting area, a little open air trellis that has in its design, it seems to match the tenor of some of the succulents and some of the more spikier plants and feature plants you see in here. So it's an incredibly interesting set of colors and textures. And then of course you have this, of course this is going to be commented upon, right? Your multiple birdhouses as you sit across all this. So Terry, share some perspectives here.
Well, I always find this garden extremely inspiring because they fearlessly take plants out and replace them with something else. Like the first time it was on the garden tour, they had planted an orchard. The next tour, they'd taken out half of it. And this time they're down to 2 pear trees because they didn't want to deal with spraying and all the things you have to do in order to have really productive fruit trees in our climate. So they kept the 2 that they really don't have to do any pest management with. And the 2 pears do produce big pears. The other thing that I find interesting about how they plant is that in the spring, early spring, the two of them go through the garden and Susie points out what she wants to get rid of and Vicky takes notes. And then when Susie's the designer, so when she goes to replace plants, it's about color. So she'll say, I want a purple plant there. And it's not so much that she's picking specific varieties of plants. She's picking things that she likes the look of and that she likes the color of. So I find that pretty interesting. And then they use big areas of mulch, and they do that as kind of visual relief because there is so much color and texture and everything going on in the areas of the plantings that your eye gets to rest with the mulched and the rock areas. So I always find this a fascinating garden to spend some time on and be able to just stare at some of the plant vignettes that are there. I also like the fact that there's some rubber geese in some of the garden beds, which I just think is kind of funny. That was Vicky's idea. She wanted some whimsy. So they have these life-size rubber Canada geese in certain places.
You know, I guess we should take it to heart, right? Is that, you know, you're saying every spring they actually go through there and actually they're prepared to cull from the garden, you know, plants that they choose, you know, that they're tired of or just not performing, you know, or giving them
they've outgrown their space.
Yeah. And so that's an annual exercise every spring. Very impressive. Well, this next garden, you know, Elizabeth and Garnet, you're on here. This is at, you know, Jake and Bertie McCowan. And it, you know, I was impressed, obviously, and just going through here in terms of the creativity that I saw in these pictures about what they've done to actually to optimize growth in vegetables. And so again, by the way, I think this is also a compliment, Terry, to your choice of gardens in that we have, you know, you have major landscapes. You know, we so far we've looked at expansive landscapes, we've looked at intimate spaces, and now we're about to look at, you know, at intensive use of garden space for vegetable production. And it just, you know, the innovation here you see with simple materials, you know, it's not over the top expense and so forth, but you know, a very effective use of space for vegetable production here. And yet it's attractive, right? You know, from a visual perspective, and in terms of what they've achieved. Elizabeth, Garnet, your thoughts and reflections?
Well, I'll say something, and part of what, I mean, I love vegetable gardening. That's kind of my thing. And I love Terry's ability to look at landscape gardens, you know, showcase type gardens, and also to see the value of vegetable gardening. And what really impressed me about this is a cooperative garden between the husband and the wife who have very different ideas about gardening. She wants flowers. He sees vegetables as the most important thing. And yet here in the middle of the picture you're looking at now are the poppies that she asked to have planted in the garden. And she says, next year there will be another planting of them. But they're a wonderful pollinator attractor. The other thing that to me, what I watched happen during the time that Garnet and I and Terry were working with this couple was the growth of the two of them in terms of being able to meet the public and expose their garden. The second time that I met with them, I thought he was going to pull out of the garden tour. His garden wasn't growing. Well, none of our gardens were growing. I think it was very normalizing for him to have people come through the garden looking for advice and him being able to give expert advice on growing vegetables and to hear from everyone who came through. Yeah, did your garden take a long time to get started this spring? So that was fun. The other thing that I think Terry did a really great job of, and this family and the family next door, which are the family that are renting the property at the Randall Street Garden, is that cooperation between neighbors. And this is, I would have to say, a relatively sketchy neighborhood. And yet here we have this beautiful garden. We have two gardens side by side, one a growing community garden and one an established family garden. The gate between the two properties was opened and closed dozens of times as people walked back and forth between the two gardens. It was just a lovely cooperative venture here. And good for you, Terry, for having the courage or the forethought, whatever, to say, let's get a veggie garden in there.
Well, thank you, because I met Jake in Home Depot in March, and he was buying soil. And so, you never know where interesting gardens are just kind of happen. And I really admire them because he didn't start gardening until he retired. And his brother-in-law actually got him excited about vegetable garden. So he's only really been gardening for about maybe 10 years or so. And I think it's just a real tribute to somebody discovering how satisfying it can be to have a garden.
I have to comment on this, the home-spooled greenhouse here, right? And the fact that, because again, you can prepare a covered gardening structure, with just basically simple materials. And I love the little space heater he's got in the corner over there, right? So he's outfitted it, right, very professionally, and yet it has this incredibly rustic look. And knowing it looks like it's all reclaimed materials, right? They were put together on this.
He had the cutest little tool shed that he made out of pallets, and that was off to the side against I think it was a garage. I don't think it was the house. I think it was the garage, if I remember right. And he just made this cute little structure to put his tools in.
He said that the only thing he purchased was the door for the tool shed.
And this should be inspiration for a lot of people, is that found materials, right, can be deployed in incredibly creative uses. And it speaks also to, Elizabeth, your point here is that, how gardening, in a homeowner setting can be a catalyst, right, for community development. As you mentioned, it was a somewhat sketchy neighborhood, and it leads to a community garden, it leads to a community fellowship. So there's a lot of from a civic well-being and civic health perspective, how horticulture can lead to and contribute to that.
So the other interesting part of this garden is the antithesis of the lawns that you commented on in the other gardens, Kelly. The lawn in this garden is made up, he doesn't do weed kill or anything. So the lawn is actually what we kind of named an eco lawn. Actually, I think Katie Lutz came up with that term for this use of the grass area. So it is full of things that lots of people regard as weeds, but it's really quite beautiful. And it makes composting his lawn clippings organic and good for his for his vegetable garden and everything else.
Yeah, I think that again, in conclusion, I think you really celebrate. You can see the incredible investment in time and funds that have been used in some of these other gardens to create the hardscapes and the choice of key specimen plants. And yet you look at this garden here in terms of of great efficiency, great use of simple materials, and it's in a very natural, fitting in with the landscape approach here. And so last but not least, of course, Barbara, you led, the tribe at the plant sale. And I've got this collection here of some of the snapshots that were taken from the day, from what we worked out here. And it was a phenomenal location from my perspective, Barbara, in that, you had your house there and you had then this open lot that was on the, very busy, very visible streets, right? And that we certainly know that the vendors who came and joined us that day at the sale, enjoyed the space and enjoyed the experience. And of course, the sale, was just, was a huge success relative to what we sold. Barbara, you want to pick up on some comments, perspectives?
Well, I guess I just wanted to echo, certainly the location, I think, helped us a lot because there was so much traffic going by. And it just simply caught the eye of a lot of people, a lot of customers, and also in combination with having the vendors there, it really helped make it a festive appearance. And I think that also was a draw for people. So yeah, it was great. I had asked Kelly basically for, I guess, to say a little bit about the plant sale, although my focus really has been doing a feedback for how we can do improvements for next year. So I won't bore anybody with that, but we'll share that with Terry, so that can be passed on for next year and give everyone kind of a leg up for the next plant sale.
You mean you don't want to organize the next plant sale, Barbara?
Somehow foreseeing what's going to happen next year is beyond my capability right now. So,
By the way, I'll make the comment that because we had the plant sale, of course, is right next to your home, Barbara. It was outstanding to be able to point to your home and be able to point to your landscape as an example for how some of the plants being sold, right, could be used in a landscape setting. So that was pretty cool, right? In that you're simply not looking at these plants we had for sale in isolation. You could look at them and point to your garden and your landscape and say, see how Barbara has arranged, a similar type of plants and colors and shapes and, and textures to create this garden experience. So it was a great setting to encourage sales.
Yeah, I should have planned it more, but I did not. But it was pretty funny because I had a lot of people wandering through my backyard and around the house. So I was glad that they were able to do that. And because my house is on such a busy street, a lot of people have always mentioned, oh, I've seen this house. I've always wondered who lives there. And so that was kind of a fun thing too. So. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Barbara's house is cattywampus from the Domino's Pizza. So we think that was actually a strategic choice on Barbara's point, right? To make sure that the access to the pizza and ensuring that pizza deliveries could be accomplished in under 30 minutes was an absolute.
Right. By about 2 minutes, I think. And yes, its location is everything. It's the Domino's Pizza and the Ace of Clubs Tavern. So I'm in a prime location.
So
Well-
I have a question about the vendors. So in the end, I did run over there at, I think it was 3:00 and quickly talked to them and then ran back to my garden, but they seemed happy. How does everybody feel about having vendors at the plant sale? Because the vendors, they're like, we want to do this again. We hope every year you have us, so
That's good.
yeah. I think it
They
added
love-
to the sale.
They love the cookies,
I'm sure.
the vendors.
Well, I'm sure they did.
And one of the vendors donated something for our raffle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was really kind.
I want to echo the thoughts, Robin. I think the vendors at the plant sale add to our experience, right, and make it a more encompassing, a more interesting space.
Yeah. And that just makes it, if we're going to do that every year or try to do that every year, we just have to try to find a place that has room for vendors.
Yeah. And
'Cause
Robin,
that's not always the case.
I'm really glad to hear that they had a positive experience. I know I checked with a few of the vendors during the day, but events kind of overtook me, so I didn't really get to pay much attention to them. But and I know Rick was there to take care of them and deal with the setup and everything, and that went very smoothly too. I thought. It wasn't planned out like for the home and garden show, but it all worked.
Yeah. They seemed happy too.
That's good.
So again, a shout out to everyone. You know, this is across all the activities we do every year. This is entirely, the whole garden program is, the tour program is entirely dependent upon volunteers and volunteer activities. So it's a huge, major activity that speaks into it, and we can celebrate, you know, a great accomplishment, not just from a financial perspective, but as we've talked about, from the impact we make upon the visitors, and the inspiration we provide, the education we provide, you know, and the joy that we're bringing to the people that are coming and visiting these gardens. So it's just, you know, it's a real bright spot in terms of what we do every year here. Okay, on to some more mundane topics. Let's talk about August. Let's talk about, you know, to-dos. You know, you know, according to OSU, this is the optimal date to establish a new law. And I have a big question mark on here, and that, you know, it's always challenging in this climate, right? You know, to deal with to know you got to deal with the watering and dealing with the fertilization to create a new lawn here. And of course, in talking with the lemurs regarding their garden and the amount of chemicals that they need to maintain their garden, it also is a caution in terms of the investment required. If you want to have a beautiful garden in this climate, you know, be prepared to make the investment both in fertilizer and herbicides and pesticides to make that happen. Termites, of course, coming up later this month in August here. So this is the right time to be thinking about where you've got your firewood stacked or other wood that's rotting relative to your homes. Obviously watering, you know, we can't say it enough, you know, the best time to water is early morning. And of course, you know, the weather we've been having here, especially at the coast, often has a very cool morning with marine overcast. And then by noon or so, it burns off, and an incredibly intense sun for 4 or 5 hours. And so I appreciate that, you know, if you got water on the foliage, you know, you could really burn both your vegetables and your landscape plants here. So there's some interesting reflections here in terms of the technique of watering the soil versus the foliage. And an interesting point here about camellias, right? You know, asking for deep watering this month to make sure that the buds are appropriate and robust for next spring. Okay. Lawn clippings, of course, reminder, don't compost if you've got that weed and feed fertilizers you're using there. Obviously, pruning, you know, it can be done as members, as Cass Turnbull always reminded us. We can pretty much prune any time during the year here in the Northwest, and and the comment being here is that it's a great time to be pruning some of the fruit trees before the fall rains begin, and of course, that dead fruiting canes to be pulled out. And at planting, it's even though you know we're still finally in the heat of summer, it's time, of course, to be thinking about fall plantings, and replantings of peas, etc., and you know other vegetables that are making things happen. And then finally, of course, you know, pest monitoring, and you know, it's interesting that I've been getting more notices than I would expect for this time of year about invasive species. You know, that the giant hornet, the lanternfly. You're looking here for the spotted winged Drosophila. You know, so you've got this, you know, you've got some interesting, you know, with climate change and with seasonal changes, right? You know, some of these invasive pests, we may be seeing more of, or certainly more intensive presence of at this time. Any other comments from anybody with respect to August to-dos? Terry?
Yes, I just want to mention about another pest that I encountered yesterday. Wasps. The wasps are really active right now, and I got stung when I was in tall grass picking blackberries with the grandsons. So it wasn't coming out of a bush or a flower or anything. It was coming out of the grass. So beware.
Ouch. Jude, you have your hand up.
Yeah, lanternfly. I didn't know they were here. What kind of inquiries are you getting? Is it for real?
I'm not getting inquiries. I'm just some of the just some of the notices that I'm reading.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew, I'm glad they're not here.
Yeah. Not here, at least not yet. I am hearing about the emerald ash borer, right? So that for your ash trees, right? This is just the OSU is even recommending don't even bother planting ash anymore. So that's rather tragic. So Terry, sorry about the wasp. Any other comments? Any other comments regarding August?
I'm getting thunder and lightning.
In Bend, right?
Yeah, like all of a sudden it's lightning and thunder is getting all weird out here.
Well, stay safe unless you want to take a golf club and go wander around in the rain.
I had an announcement, and you probably saw it in the e-news, that in North Beach, if any of the interns out there or any of the master gardeners need hours, we're having a compost workshop in the community garden given by the master gardeners on August 20th from 10 to 11:30. Anybody that wants to work in that class, contact Karen Young at 425-255-4025, and the information's in the e-news. And then if you want to get plant clinic hours, anybody out there, we're doing a plant clinic on August 27th and September 24th at ACE from 10 to 2. And you can work both shifts, or you can pick a shift, 10 to 12 or 12 to 2. And again, you can contact Bridget Timmy, who runs the plant clinics out here. So anybody need some more hours? There it is. Thanks.
Thanks, Sushila. And we'll get to more announcements here in a second here. Let me just run through just a couple of other slides here as we move on. A reminder here of our 2022 elected board here. And reminder, of course, of Tony, Alina, and Brenda as our coordinators. A note here is that with respect to committees and the importance of recruiting for volunteers here for committees, we've got John, Margie, Terry, and Cindy. Cindy's going to be stepping down from her education committee responsibility, right? And John's going to be stepping down from his public outreach responsibility for next year. So there's definitely an opportunity as we start thinking about next year. Reminder that our elections, right? Our elections for officers will be held at our October meeting. So on the October 11th meeting, right, we'll be electing officers for next year, and that'll include, there's opportunities here for engagement of everyone. And just as Sushila was pointing out with respect to Ocean Shores, huge opportunities for public engagement at the activities happening in each of the regional gardens here. Sabine or PJ, any comment, or Elizabeth, any from a nomination committee perspective, any comments you want to make now with respect to next year's slate of candidates?
Well, I'll make a comment because somehow I managed to be nominated for the nominating committee. But I am pulling together some folks to be the nominating committee, and we will begin preparing to address the entire master gardener population. Hopefully they are members of the foundation, and recruiting, clarifying whether or not people are staying in their current position, etc. So be expecting calls, begging, pleading you to join the foundation board. Thank you.
There you go. And of course, if begging and pleading don't work, Elizabeth would then resort to cajoling and harassing.
And then she will resort to crying and etc.
So again, lots of opportunities for engagement, and encourage everyone to get involved, because a reminder, as a service organization, I mean, this is what we're all about, right? Is reaching out to the public, and it does require volunteer effort and engagement. Okay, so we've got a number of announcements here coming up in here, and I want to open up the floor to everyone here to be talking about, but I want to make sure that we give some special time for Cindy and for Mike to talk about activities that are really upon us right now with our two county fairs. We hear a lot about revenge travel that is going on across the country here as people been cooped up for 2.5 years, right? Because of COVID, are getting out and trying to travel. And I think we're going to be experiencing that at our county fairs here, coming up this week in Grays Harbor and in a couple of weeks for Pacific County. So Cindy, some thoughts you want to offer on the Grays Harbor Fair, and I'll riff to Mike then with the next slide. Cindy, do you have anything you want to share?
Yep, can you hear me?
We can. You're very faint.
Okay, so yeah, the fair starts tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Can you hear it okay now?
We can. It's better.
Okay, all right. 10 o'clock in the morning.
I can't hear her at all.
Sorry, John. We'll have to do the best we can. Cindy, pick it up.
Yep. Okay. Well, so tomorrow at 10 a.m. the fair starts. It goes till 10 p.m. Every evening except for Saturday. So it's only going to run 4 days. It usually runs for 5 if you've ever worked at the fair before. We have a full slate of volunteers for every day and every shift. So that's a good thing. And we have children's events. Jude's put together an adult kind of event activity as well. Not events, there are activities. And we are going to have some folks in the composting area to talk as well. Boy, is there anything else you need to hear from me on this, Kelly?
Just want to make sure that, Cindy, are you covered for the volunteers you need? Is there any assistance you need from us?
Nope, we're good. We've got it. So we've had a lot of good help from the interns and from our veterans in doing the general garden cleanup and tidying and planting and all that throughout the season. So that's been great. And further, like I said, we have a full slate of volunteers for both sessions, both shifts every day. So we're in good shape.
Cindy, where do the cats go during fair days? I can't imagine I can't imagine the cats that appreciate thousands of people traversing their territory.
And then on top of that, you add the hideous noise of the racetrack, which is really loud. It's next door, so it's deafening. I think they go under the storage building that's out there for the most part. I think that's where they hide out mostly. You know where I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Kelly, it's back in the, yeah, okay. I think that's what they do mostly. But I feed them in the morning, so we at least have a little time together before the wild things start for them. So that's it.
We'll take lots of pictures. And again, congratulations on your and your volunteers' preparation, right, in making this garden, and making this garden as pristine as it is. As we've said all along, this is our kind of our retail space. This is kind of our front door, and the demo garden there. And so that we certainly know that the Grays Harbor Fair people appreciate our garden as a centerpiece and as a point of as a point of interest. So it is I think we're expecting, Cindy, again, thousands, right, of people to stop by.
Yes, we've had, I think, up to 3,000 people in the past, but you just never know how many you're going to get on a like you were talking about, with people anxious to get out after being closed up for so long. So, but it looks like they're gonna have a good outpouring though. So
now on a much smaller affair, right? Mike is leading once again our Pacific County activities here, which is always at the very end of August. So Mike, we're in a new location. Talk to us about it.
We are. Thank you, Tony Gwynn, for helping us out one more time, a new location this year. And like you were saying, Kelly, the fair is the 24th through the 27th in Pacific County. The new location is going to be a wonderful opportunity. And we'll have our display area set up. You can see the picture that we have right there. It'll be kind of a duplicate, only in a different area. We've got kids activities. And for the volunteers that'll be there, get online, get your tickets, your band, and reimbursement for fair attendance costs. You'll get reimbursed for that. The schedule is coming along very nicely. I've massaged it to where we have at least 2 people every time slot every day, and that's for safety, security, and for company too. It gets kind of lonely at times. I'm jealous of Cindy and her 3,000 participation number that'll be there, but we're not going to be anywhere near that. But it's an awful lot of fun. We have volunteers, the veterans, I've got that covered. Got lots of room for interns to be able to show up and get a hold of me, and we'll go over the schedule and see what we can do to help it out. But yeah, everything's rolling along very nicely.
So Mike, to confirm, you're still looking for you still got some slots you want to cover for some of the booth area.
For the interns.
Okay. And so perhaps you're going to be reaching out directly to the interns and actually, making sure that they're aware perhaps of the opportunity.
Yep. I'll reach out to them again. They've been included in previous emails. I have the current roster and go through and find all of the interns, and they get an email from me. Here are the time slots that are available and participation. If you have any questions, give me a call. And we've got a good plan in order for the setup and the takedown. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's coming together very nicely. We've just got great people who have the experience to help me pull this off. So I really appreciate everybody's input.
And just a heads up, one of the fun things that Mike always features are invasive species. And so once again, Mike will have a great collection of of really noxious weeds and noxious plants, right, to show off.
Yes, yep. I'll have all of the crowd pleasers. The gorse and tansy ragwort is in bloom now. We'll have some English ivy, Scotch broom, and I'll set out some other ones and get them all ready. So it'll be a nice display to show everybody. Like Kelly's brought up in the past, there's a lot of new people that have moved to Pacific County and are wondering what to plant, what to grow. A great opportunity to show them they are responsible if they have these invasive species on their property. They have responsibility to be able to maintain it. And it's great to be able to bring that to their attention. And they didn't know.
So again, a thank you both to Cindy and to Mike for organizing their respective fair activities. Confirming, that Cindy's got her volunteer slate set. Encouraging everybody, of course, just to visit, right, and to see the demonstration garden in its finest fashion at this time of year. And Mike, you're still looking for a few slots for interns from the Pacific County Fair. And again, this is what an easy opportunity to pick up, again, additional volunteer hours and additional continuing education hours.
Yep. Thank you.
A quick shout out, by the way, to Rhonda Kennedy, who's on vacation here today and couldn't join us, but on two fronts here. There was a large rhododendron plant that's actually going to be repurposed and dug up near Elma. It's well known to both Robin and Rhonda, and Rhonda actually went out there and I believe she's potted up nearly 100 of these rhododendron plants that she's going to be nurturing for the plant sale next year at the tour. And so it's a quick reminder, by the way, that now is a great time to be thinking about any separations or any digging up or removals or transplants that would make sense even now to be thinking about setting aside and nurturing for the plant sale next year. So you can imagine that what Rhonda has delivered with these, I believe 70 some odd plants. These are going to be at, very impressive rhododendron specimens for sale for next year. So big shout out to thank you for Rhonda. On a second note of thanks to Rhonda is that she led in the application of the foundation to Washington Department of Commerce, to this Festival and Events Association for a grant that was meant to supplement losses that nonprofit groups experienced during the pandemic because they couldn't have their normal festival or their normal events. So Rhonda led an application on behalf of the foundation, on behalf of our foundation, that petitioned for funds based upon losses to us of not having the Home and Garden Show or the garden tour in the past couple of years. And so we've been awarded $9,000 from Department of Commerce for this. So a huge shout out to Rhonda for persisting in the application process and at pulling in an additional $9,000 for us. So she can't join us here today, but I'm sure she'd appreciate a note from each of us here, celebrating what she's accomplished. Okay. So a quick note here is that, there's still time to register for the state conference. Kathleen, Karen, any other comments regarding the state conference coming up at the end of September?
I have a comment. This is Karen. I still need some raffle items. Every foundation is asked to provide 5 raffle items, and in my possession, I now have 3. I have an original watercolor that Robin donated. I have the package from the Westport Winery that PJ got for us. And I have this wooden sculpture that one of the vendors at the plant sale donated. So I still need 2 more items. Bev told me she had some things, and I thought that Sharon had something in mind also.
Yes, this is Sharon.
Sorry, Sharon.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of things. What I can do is I can take pictures of it and email the pictures to you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Or text them to me if you will. That's
I will.
easier for me to do something with them.
Okay, I can do that.
Yes, Karen,
Take my number.
have a case of wine, Cabernet Sauvignon from California. It's very good wine, but I don't know. I received an email from the foundation. They've got to get a permit to be able to sell wine, so I'm not sure.
They're in the process of getting that. That last
Yeah.
email from.
So I have a case of wine which should fetch. That's 12 bottles, and it should fetch quite a bit.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, what we donate in the raffle comes back to us in our foundation. Some of it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, Sharon. What we donate in the raffle goes all to the state.
To the state, okay. They also wanted us to reserve a table.
But that was for sharing success, right? If somebody's going to be
for the raffle, according to John.
I'm not sure about that.
I'll talk to you offline.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So again, it's an easy opportunity here to register and to pick up your continuing education hours. There's a lot of sessions are filling up. So it is time to commit yourself for this time. And because it's in Olympia, it's not a long drive. So we are looking forward to it.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, as of mid-July, there were 100 places left, 100 registrations left. They had 250 people already registered.
Okay, so there'll be a cap on the number of people there. So it clearly is an opportunity and an obligation. If you want to get a seat, better get a seat.
And Kelly, this is Karen. I take the News Tribune, and they had an ad in the News Tribune for it. So they're opening it to the public.
Okay, so this is there's no delay is needed here. This is the time to jump onto it.
Correct.
And
Okay.
it won't, excuse me again, it won't be recorded. So this is your chance to attend in person.
Yeah, so it's got to, so if we want these hours, you want these continuing education hours, you got to go live. Thanks, both Sharon, Kathleen, and Karen, right, for your engagement with the state on this program. And speaking about engagement, Alina, Brenda, any comments that, again, adding impact that as we've talked about it here before, it's really important to stay up with this. Because if you end up near the end of the year trying to remember what you did months back, it's going to be challenging. So stay up with adding the impact. Any comment,
And
Brenda and Alina?
if anyone is having difficulty using Give Pulse or needs any help, please contact me. We are continuing to reach out to members who have not entered anything, or for anyone who needs assistance.
Thanks much, Brenda. Okay, so I want to pick up on it on two key items here. Just a heads up, right? That you would have received an email from Katie as part of the an overall communication to the entire foundation with the proposed bylaws, revisions to the bylaws that that the committee has been working on all spring. And this marked up bylaws has been shared to the entire foundation here. Our intention is that on the September meeting is we will vote to accept these bylaws, to accept these bylaws as revised bylaws for the foundation. So there's an opportunity here if you have any questions regarding any of the text, regarding any of the articles, regarding any of the provisions, to reach out to Sharon or Sabine. This is a lot of work's gone into this, and the modifications, are in some ways substantive, in some ways nuanced. But reaching out to it, reaching out now to Sharon, Sabine, or to PJ for any questions or any comments you want to make now with respect to the bylaws.
Kelly, this is PJ. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So just a reminder to everyone that we have been working on these bylaws since actually January. And we had some guidance from Cowlitz County, who had a bylaws expert on their committee because they had just redone them so that it incorporated the state of Washington's nonprofit requirements. But the bigger piece, I think, for us is that Sabine already knows, as your president-elect, that at the turn of the year, 2023, she already has notes on things that probably need to look at, not probably, they need to be looked at to be tweaked or revisited, that this is getting this framework in place just brings us to the current and doesn't mean that anything is set in stone, because Sabine and a new committee will be formed and we'll continue to work on it, because bylaws are a living document for our organization. And this is about the foundation, just a reminder to everyone, the foundation, not the master gardeners under WSU. We don't fall under their branding requirements from WSU because we are the foundation that supports our master gardeners in Grays Harbor and Pacific County. So we need our bylaws to be a nonprofit organization, and we hope you all take a good look at them and be ready to come to vote in September. And once again, thank you to everyone, and especially to the committee for all their hard work.
Cindy, you have your hand up. You have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I can be heard first, though.
Again, it's coming across really soft. We'll have to work on your microphone here.
Yeah, I sure will. I'm sorry about that. But I had a question, and it's for any member of the committee, about the rationale for postponing the addition of adding in the Greater Grays Harbor directorship into the that was under Article 5 of the officers.
So the question, just repeating the question. Repeating the question for everybody here is that, what Cindy's asking is that, to the committee, is that why do we want to delay adding a Greater Grays Harbor director, similar to the Pacific County and the North Beach directors we have? PJ.
I have no problem. I have no problem with that. And we can
didn't you
tweak
do
that
it?
for the September 13th meeting.
So why didn't it get included in this group though, PJ? I mean, that
Be-
was something we talked about. It sounded like everybody understood why. So, but in the bylaws, you say that you want to wait until the next bylaw revision, which doesn't make any sense to me.
I have a
Well,
question.
Well, let's just, PJ, you want to respond to that, and I'll come back to you, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
the committee wasn't, the committee wanted to stay with what they had, but we don't have any problem with tweaking that, Cindy. There's been a lot of moving pieces this summer. So if that is something we need to get in, if Sharon is listening, she has the main copy, we can get that added. The fleshing out of it will go into the policies and procedures handbook.
Okay.
Can I speak?
Yeah, if there's no more follow-up on that, Mary, go ahead.
Okay, well, this is a follow-up. I'm wondering what the purpose would be for adding the Greater Grays Harbor position.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you. You want to hear it from me, Mary, or you want to hear it from somebody else?
I can't hear you, Cindy.
Okay, so can you hear any better this way, Mary?
Just barely.
Okay, well, here's the reason why, is because we have representation and different organizations for Ocean Shores and for Pacific County that gives them like a special community in their geographic area, which is a great thing. And it allows them to coordinate and do master gardener things in their group. We don't have that in Grays Harbor County. It used to be the foundation did it all across the board. It does not do that anymore with these new positions for Ocean Shores and for Pacific County. So I'm just asking for Greater Grays Harbor to have such a position so that we can do the same things and we can have the same kind of representation.
So who would comprise the Greater Grays Harbor group?
Anybody in Grays Harbor County that wants to be in there. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, how does that differ from what we have now?
70% of the population of our membership.
Okay.
What would the group do?
They would do what you think we're doing in the foundation meetings. I mean, this is exactly what we need to do, is have some sort of our organization of our own, Mary, so that we can organize plant clinics or do our workshops. But right now we don't do that anymore because the people that used to do that were board directors, and they no longer have that responsibility across the full geographic area that we oversee.
In fact, I'll echo Cindy's support for a Greater Grays Harbor activity. And as she just mentioned, the idea of workshops, the idea of plant clinics are fairly local when you start thinking about recruiting volunteers and promoting those activities. And so you can appreciate that the satellite operations, if I can refer to Pacific County and North Beach as satellites, if you will, you're able to develop a sense of community around the Master Gardener volunteers that are in those satellite communities. And it becomes easier to organize activities, easier to promote those activities. And we lack that structure. We do lack that structure, if you will, for a Greater Grays Harbor when you start thinking about Aberdeen, Hoquiam, Montesano, and Elma, and those areas there.
Yeah, I think I understand better now. Thank you, Cindy and Kelly.
Okay. Any other comments on the bylaws? Again, our intent on the 13th, right, is to vote. So if you have questions regarding this, just as Mary's bringing up here today, if you have questions, do share them, with members of the committee, with PJ, Sharon, or Sabine. And Sharon, I'll reach out to you now. You have a hand up?
Yeah, I do. Part of what I think has happened is that the education committee or directorship and the outreach have basically ended up being Grays Harbor activities. Because I agree, at one point, I think we did plan things across all three areas, but we haven't for a long time. And what's been happening with your directorship, for example, Cindy, is that you've been doing doing it basically for Grays Harbor and not for the other two areas. So, I mean, I'm not sure. We need to talk about some of the directorships in general. What do we really need? And that's not for this conversation or for this set of bylaws.
So again, a shout out to everybody on the committee making things happen here. The reason why we're talking about this now in advance of September is that bylaws revisions are kind of a big thing. And so our current bylaws require a 30-day notice to the membership of our intent to vote on these. So this is why we're talking about this now, in giving folks time to digest, the changes and the text that have been shared. I encourage everybody, again, questions and comments on this thing, reach out.
And also, Kelly, that if we're planning to give this tweak, which I think makes perfect sense, and somehow got lost in the shuffle, mainly probably my brain shuffle, then we need to have a nomination, and it needs to be on our nominees or the area needs to know, the Greater Grays Harbor area needs to come together to put forward their person so that they're on the board, just like Sushila is, just like Jan is. So it's an important piece. We'll try to get that to happen before the 30-day rule.
Not so much having a person in that position, but having the position exist at this point in time. Getting somebody in the position, PJ, is may not be immediate, but at least what you can count on is at least we have a position to fill. All
You got it.
For now is equity in the positions, so that gotcha.
Okay, and I just
Thanks, Cindy.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I'm going to talk as someone on the nominating committee, because there is no job description to go with that particular position. I agree with you, PJ, that yes, we can put it into the bylaws, and I agree with you, Cindy. It can be in the bylaws, but we're not going to recruit because we have no job description that describes what that individual would be doing. And so let's wait until we have a job description via the our whatever we're going to do about creating a job description, whether that's policies and procedures or whatever.
So Elizabeth, we haven't had a job description for the Pacific County position nor the Ocean Shores position when they were first developed either. So what we're doing is we're just making this a moving target. That's all. To say that we can't do it without that is not true. What we can do it, and we have done it before without that. We're just not ready to do it at this point in time because we're still talking in the preliminary stages.
Okay. Well, good discussion all. Jude, do you have a final comment?
I want to make one comment to Cindy. There are job descriptions for the Ocean Shores and the Pacific County directors because I happen to have them on my laptop, but they're sorely outdated. I think I just noticed that it said 2014. So if we want to use those as kind of boilerplates for all three positions, Greater Grays Harbor, Pacific County, and Ocean Shores, I'd be happy to send it to whoever who's interested in looking at them.
Jude, you have your hand up. Okay. I'll move on unless Jude, if you want to just voice in there. So
Jude,
again,
unmute. Jude needs to unmute.
Thank you. My space bar didn't work. We need to do a great deal of thought, consideration, and planning on looking at the procedures handbook, because things have kind of fallen apart in many ways, and we need to either redefine them or get rid of them or put in something new. So I hope a lot of people who are willing to help on that, we get new procedures handbook in line really soon.
Well said. And indeed, this points to the fact that the bylaws, of course, provide an architecture, a skeleton, if you will, a structure upon which to hand policies and procedures. So it, the actual operating particulars regarding an organization can be added, need to be fleshed out in such a document.
Yeah, and that's the plan actually in the fall. September, it's kind of, we have it on our calendars, so to say, to work on that.
Very good.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathleen, just real quick though.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering if Beth could make the job descriptions she's talking about open for everyone to see somehow, so we could all get an idea of it.
Okay. I'm sure Bev, I'm sure Bev can. So we'll get some of those things shared and push those out to some of the committee. Okay, so
Kelly,
go ahead, Mary. I want to move on though, but go ahead.
I know I won't be long. I would like to work with the procedures, so whoever's in charge of that, if they would keep me in mind. Thank you.
Very
And
good.
just another comment, all of those descriptions, I believe, are on our website.
Yes, they all the job descriptions we currently have are on the website and can be found under the member area.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the things that we are going to be talking about in the board meeting that will now be coming up is discussion about the future of meetings. So just in the same notion that Jude and Mary are talking about how we want to adjust policies and procedures and bring us up to speed, if you will, and for the 21st century. One of the things that we'd like to be discussing is, okay, when, where, and how do we want to meet as a group here? Hopefully we're persisting, through the through the COVID pandemic here, and we'll have an opportunity to actually gather together formally as a foundation. And we've definitely used the Zoom experience to maintain connectivity throughout these 2.5 years. But we definitely have realized that with some of the younger folks that we've attracted to the foundation, as well as the folks that are currently still working, a Tuesday 10 o'clock in the morning time for a foundation meeting is pretty inconvenient for a lot of people. So we've gotten some very good feedback already collected from some individuals saying, hey, what can we do to think about a change in meeting time and place and methodology? So we're not going to talk about it here at this foundation meeting. We are going to begin talking about it at the board meeting. That'll be immediately following here. And so I encourage folks, if you can't join us for the board meeting coming up, to start thinking about your own thoughts about, hey, is this the right time to optimize participation from all of our members? What other options should we be considering with respect to time, place, and technique? So finally, any other comments, questions, announcements we want to get into here for before we close the foundation meeting formally?
I have one. I think I raised my hand on my little thing, but I'm not sure. This is Karen. I would like to announce that this coming Sunday, there will be a plant clinic at the farmers market in Aberdeen. So that if anybody needs hours, let me know.
Very good. Okay, so Karen's giving an announcement here. We have a plant clinic opportunity and an opportunity for hours. This should be especially important for a lot of our interns.
Yes, and there will be one more plant clinic on the second Sunday of September. I think it's the 11th. I'm not positive, but I think it is.
Very good. And heads up, of course, that here in Pacific County, we have a plant clinic on the 13th of August. So opportunities there in Owako. Any other announcements? Okay. Okay. So if no other announcements, I'm going to go ahead and close the formal meeting here and